And then I'm going to hit, hi, everybody. So we're going to, let's see. Okay. So Dr. Rob, the first question. My partner is an SAPA. We have been using an accountability software on his phone and laptop for several months that allows me, the partner, to see screenshots of his activities and other information about his usage. I was explaining this to my therapist, not a CSAT or ABSAT trained, seeing them for EMDR. And they were concerned about privacy, specifically that I can see messages too from others in his SAA fellowship and screenshots from SAA Zoom meetings he attends. Don't know if there's, so I guess.
And I don't see that there, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's more, I just found it, okay. I've been treating this as privileged and confidential information that I'll never share, and that it's unfortunate but necessary ramification of the circumstances and need for accountability. My therapist insists this is a violation of privacy and even of SAA anonymity guidelines. What is your opinion?
Wow, that's a tough one. By the way, Tammy, can I read these? I'm trying to, I see the open
yes,
one, but
they're
that's
in
not
the answered. If you look at the answer.
Not, but maybe the next one. I do know what the question is, so there we go. You know, we are both avid 12-steppers, and so I'm just wondering, I want to start with you because I think that you have a lot of insight into this. So what are your thoughts? If not, I'll jump in.
I would not share with, I don't tell my husband or anybody else, you know. I would have concerns about that. I'm also a little concerned that you're the accountability partner. I really go back to the beginning. It's like, you know, that would be a sponsor or his therapist to have the screenshot. Otherwise, you know, it's like you're policing it, and that puts you not, I mean, I understand that you want to know what's going on for your safety. I completely understand that. But like, I don't, you know, if I see somebody in the grocery store, you know, I don't, you know, we say hi, you know, my husband doesn't even ask anymore, you know, how do you know this person? I mean, like, cause, you know, we're just friends, you know, whatever. So like, I'm really hyper protective of anything that is said in a 12-step group. And if it's a screenshot, you have contact information, and you're not under any HIPAA. And, you know, so it would make me very concerned as somebody else in the group if I knew that that was being shared with a partner or spouse. Like when we do Zoom calls, you know, like we've got the betrayed partner group, and there was an issue where a husband walked through, she had earphones on and everything, but the rest of the group was concerned. And I understand that. It's like, you know, that what's being shared in the meeting on both sides, you know, needs to be protected. So that's my take on it. So what are your thoughts, Dr. Rob?
Well, number one, I want to make sure that someone just wrote a note in the chat. If you want us to answer a question, please put it in the Q&A, because you wrote a great question, but we won't answer it in the chat. So, but yeah. Tammy, this is a difficult one, because, you know, I say to partners, once you've been betrayed and trust has been broken, you can look at anything, you know, look at bank statements, look at cell phone records, look at their texting records. I mean, you do lose the right to privacy with your partner if you've been hiding and cheating. On the other hand, and I probably wouldn't put it as strongly as that therapist did. I'd probably, you know, say something more like, is there a way that the two of you can work together so that this particular information, either you're sitting together when you're looking at it and you can say, oh, that's a program thing, or, you know, just kind of go through that. I don't quite understand why your spouse is taking screenshots of people in 12-step meet, or I wouldn't do that. It's anonymous.
No, I think I think it's the filtering thing that it provides screenshots every so often of things. That's okay. My sense. I think it's the software programming that does that, right, so that they come at, you know, particular times. So
right. And so I don't have an easy answer for you, because, you know, you want to look through everything, and I understand that, and you want to see these things. On the other hand, it really is very private, you know, and you don't know, quite honestly, and I'll just put it in a more direct way. Perhaps your best friend's wife or husband or wife is cheating, and you never knew anything about it, didn't want to know about it, but now you see that the cheater in that room. Well, now you have information that doesn't belong with you, because they're there trying to protect their marriage or whatever it is, and they certainly don't want to see a neighbor or somebody else know what they're there for. That person might be there before their spouse is found out. They may be there because their doctor told them or whatever. And so I wouldn't want you to be in a position of seeing that person at the grocery store and thinking, ooh, I know things about them that, should I tell them that their spouse is going to meetings for sex issues? I mean, so I think you put yourself in a precarious position. And I'm actually not really sure how to answer this question, Tammy, because you need to look at stuff. I understand that, but there's some things that you really shouldn't look at because it's private. And I don't know, I truly don't have an answer for, like, this is just escaping me. Do you have another? I was hoping you'd come up with an answer is what I was
Yeah,
hoping.
no, but my only thought is, if the filtering goes to the sponsor, his therapist, whatever, and then, because then that's a neutral person, and then it isn't the partner policing, so to speak. And when you were saying that, I was thinking, and think about it the other way. So now if somebody else's partner is doing something similar and then they see something and know about you and your husband, I mean, that would be a two-way street. So I would think about it also from what would I want, what do I want out there, because I hear you saying I'm being, super confidential with this, but what happens if somebody else isn't, so I think that there's ways to get your needs met for security, like I said, his sponsor, his peer support, his therapist, and you getting a weekly, yes, things are checking off, accountability wise or something like that. That might work to give you the security that you need and deserve without putting you in the situation of being the keeper of secrets. I mean, that's kind of the keeper of secrets. So
I will say to other people's secrets, but I will say this to you. What I would expect if I was sponsoring someone, or if I was someone's therapist and I found out, I was looking through, or I was asked by you to look, I wouldn't call them. I would ask you to talk about it with them. I would make it a priority for you to say,
that's a great idea.
Sitting with my sponsor, because it's not your sponsor, your therapist's job to report back to you. It is your husband or wife's job to report back to you. So my hope is that the people that they give this accountability job to, so that you don't have to feel like you're invading other people's lives, that they are committed to turning to the person who cheated on you and saying, I'm not, you have to talk to them. You have to let them know this is why I'm here. And I'm not going to do this for you unless you're going to take an action when I find something. And we can work together on what you did, but your spouse needs to understand that something happened. So, that's the best. That's a good answer, Tam. I hadn't thought of that one.
Well, it is a challenging situation, and I do love the filtering software that gives a report of here's what here's where you've been, so that it has the opportunity for you to go, okay, somebody's going to see this report. Do I really want that to be on the report? And if it gives you that minute to get your executive brain engaged, so you don't just go to the compulsive behavior, that's great. I mean, that's the purpose of those, those programs. So they can be really helpful. They're just a tool, of course, not a solution. So,
but there are some that don't necessarily give a screenshot, that simply tell the person, here are all the websites that this person has visited, and this has been who they've talked to. And I think there are other ways to not have photos, or that level of. And anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time with it. I completely understand your feelings, and I think there is a point here about respecting other people's privacy. So it's it's a balance.
Next question. Hopefully you can see this in the answer now. Betrayed partner here. What do you think the difference between rage and anger is? I want to express my anger, but I don't want to rage. When does yelling become rage? Am I supposed to express my anger without raising my voice?
Well, why don't you start with that, Tam? I'm going to look this up a little bit. I have some thoughts about this. So why don't you start and I'll follow you up.
Well, and it is challenging. Okay, so I will share. I'm going to share a little personal thing. I know I used to have, I would call it my white hot rage, and it came and it overtook it. It was so powerful. I used to ride motorcycles, and one time I was parked a bit aside, and this came up for me, and somebody came over, and I just kind of shook my head, and I had my helmet on, but I still had, it opened and they looked at me and they turned around. So I know I was exuding, like they could tell this was not a good thing. And I went and did my work. I went and did some trauma work. I did some EMDR, and it has never come back. It was not serving me. It would come up on top of me and take over. Anger, I can, I know when what anger is. I can usually tap into what it's poking, like what wound it is. And I think that there are ways to express anger that are constructive, and then there are ways to express anger that are destructive.
Right.
And I have found yelling, the yelling matches, they don't really serve anything. Nobody's really listening. Like everybody just
Right.
kind of shuts down. So if there's something I'm really for me, the anger and the rage was always hitting on a hurt. And the anger and rage are powerful and external. And then I was pushing it out because I didn't want to feel the hurt. I mean, I could completely understand those things for myself. And I'm not saying this is the same for you. What I had to do was own that I'm hurt and I don't like it. But are there other ways that I can, in a more constructive way, share what I am feeling? There is, Dr. Rob talks about betrayed partners have the right to have anger. I think if it converts to destruction, if it's not serving you well, I often hear partners go, I'm becoming this person that I don't want to be. I didn't act like this before. So I think that there's a point where you go, okay, this is not who I am. And this is not what I want to be. And these are legitimate issues. So how can I convey this message in a different way? Blow off some steam with a friend before I try to talk to my partner. If it's a conflict with the partner, are there other ways to address this so that I can get my needs met? Because that's ultimately, if we're looking to get our needs met, how can we do that in a more constructive way? So what are your thoughts?
Well, I love what you talked about, constructive versus destructive, and I actually wanted to look this up. So do you mind if I read a little bit? Because I think it's useful. So anger is an emotional state of aggression and hostility towards someone or something. Most people tend to think that this also describes rage, so they must be the same thing, but they're actually quite different. Rage is best described as a fit of violent anger and fury. It's the most extreme expression of anger. Anger can be good and leads to positive outcomes. But they can motivate people. It can help them understand what's going on. But rage is excessive anger. And so, oh, by the way, and I love that it said this, though more rare, and I think you spouses go through a lot of this, rage can also be expressed inwards. And instead of getting upset with other people, I blame and rage and destroy myself. And that can lead to hate and self-harm. And this too will bubble up and be expressed externally in some way. So I think of it like this. I was thinking about the word I, and if I can say, I'm really angry at you, I'm so frustrated, I don't know how we're going to work this out, I can't believe that you did this to me. I think that is really the key, because you can get as angry as you want, but as long as you're saying how you feel and that it belongs to you, then no one can argue with you, no one can disagree, and no one should escalate. If you say, I am so sick and tired, I am so frustrated, what are they going to say? You're not? I mean, however, the minute you put that finger out and you say, you are this and you did this to me and then I think you're tipping over into rage, because no one can hear. I love you, Tammy, but when you say, and once in a while we do, you shouldn't have done that today, I can't hear it. I just shut down. And so rage is not a good way to think of it. Rage is not productive. I think Tammy sort of said this. If you want to have an effect on someone, let them know how you feel. But don't turn it into a devaluation of who they are. So the most extreme form of rage would be hitting someone, and if your words are hitting them, then they're going to shut down and they're not going to hear you. And plus, if I'm really angry at someone who hurt me, I do not want to go back and apologize for anything. And, they hurt me and they screwed me over. And the last thing I want to do is apologize. But I think if we have integrity and we have moral values that have meaning to us, we're going to have to go back and say, I'm really angry, but I didn't mean to call you unworthy or tell you don't deserve to have children, or, and I think that's the last thing I tell spouses is, we're all human beings, and our humanity is whatever humanity, ethics, morals means to you, spirituality. We are all that. And so I would not devalue someone's humanity. You don't deserve to live. You don't deserve to have these kids. You're so fucked up that nobody. I just think that, again, when you pull at that you and you start following it, here's a good word. You're going to end up having something to apologize for. But if you say I, and even in that sentence, I'm so hurt, I can't believe you did this to me, that's a very different thing than saying you are so screwed up and how could you. It's just different. So I think anger is an expression of how I feel. Rage is an attempt to hurt someone else. How about that?
Yeah,
Ooh, I
yeah. I
like that
mean,
answer.
yeah, it's very outward. Like
Right.
I mean, as soon as the rage comes up, I always think of that particular, and it's like emanating from me.
Right.
So, and I hated it, but I really think if you can, kind of peek under and see what's going on, what's really at the bottom of it, what's the hurt, that will give you an understanding and give yourself grace to go, I am so hurt by whatever. And, the betrayal wound, the neglect wound, and whatever it is, if you can look at that and hold space for yourself with that was the really powerful thing for me to be able to shift it too, was to give myself some grace, but understand that, the wound is real, but there are other ways that are going to be helpful for me to move forward
Productive.
rather than,
Mm-hmm.
otherwise I'm just pushing more people away. And I hate,
And more.
I'm willing to make amends, but, I hate when I have to, because that means, I did something that, I'm not as happy with my behavior about,
It's
so.
against your own beliefs about yourself. I wanted to just jump on something Tammy said, because it's so important, which is that rage and anger are a defense, a psychological defense against hurt. It is much easier for me to say, you ruined my life and I freaking hate you. And how could you, than for me to say, I am so hurt. I am so disappointed. I believed in you and that is much more vulnerable and much harder to say. It'll have a better response. If it doesn't, this person is not really working on themselves and can't hear you. But underneath the anger really is insecurity and deep hurt. And I know that we can't always go there, but Tammy, we just had a discussion as a team about some things, and some of us were angry at each other. And what I remember happening is when we got down to it, we were all hurt and disappointed in each other. And that's really what the anger was about. So, if you can get to that point, that's really where the healing is understanding where that all comes from, which is how hurt and disappointed you are.
And when we were able to hear that, that was like such a shift, like the whole tone of things changed. And we're able to hear that. It was transformative. It was,
Right.
I was
Everyone
like, oh,
calm
it's
down.
really good that we're all doing our work, so.
Right.
Okay. Next question. I love this one. How can I tell my partner the reasons why I think I was acting out without it coming out as blaming her?
How can I tell my partner that the reasons why I think I was acting out without it coming? Okay, I think I can answer this question. So, in fact, I write about this all the time. This is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of codependency, is that there is nothing you can ever do to make somebody else act out. There isn't anything that your spouse, they can gain weight, they can be completely unavailable, they can make you miserable. It doesn't matter. You can leave. You can get you can go to therapy. You can, focus on other things in your life that bring you joy. There are a lot of choices. And in fact, I just really want you to hear this. It is never your partner's responsibility. They can make you miserable. They can make you hurt or angry or disappointed in your relationship. That's something you can do something about in a different way. The automatic response to how miserable my relationship and my spouse is letting me down, or they won't have sex with me or whatever, is not, so I'm going to go act out. So it can never be, and this is the reason why I don't believe in codependence, because I don't think our partners can ever be responsible for leading us to do these things. That is our choice. So I don't think there's ever a reason to leave a partner feeling blamed. And I think that's one of our excuses. Boy, when we get into, well, you really did gain that weight, and, you really distance yourself from me, and you're so focused on the kids, you don't give me much time. So what's a guy or a gal to do but go act out or have an affair? That ain't it. That is not taking responsibility for your behavior. What you need to say is, I was unhappy about a whole bunch of things, and the way I dealt with them was by throwing everything to shit and going and acting out. It is your responsibility, and when you move to it's their fault, you're not looking at the problem clearly. You have other choices in an unhappy relationship or in an unhappy moment other than to have an affair, see sex workers, and look at porn. That is your choice. So there really isn't anything to blame them for then, is there? Tammy?
So I have a bunch of thoughts on this. First of all, I find why to be the wrong question. I know everybody wants to go, why? And if you know why, then you're magically going to be able to, okay, now we can move on and fix it. Sometimes people know the why and they keep acting out, so the why is less useful. I know partners are trying to understand. And unfortunately for partners, like partners who have, I hate to use the word normal, but have a normal brain and don't think, goofy like, addicts
Healthy
do.
brain. Healthy brain.
Yes, a healthy brain is a better word. Yeah. Like it's never going to make sense. It makes sense to other addicts
Right.
because we think, discombobulated, but, and I suspect you're very early in the process, because how can I tell my partner the reasons why I think I was acting out? That's the symptom. Like, you don't really even know. It takes time. When clients come to Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, we do 4 to 5 hours of assessment on them, so that we understand some of those underlying issues. So you can go, yeah, my wife gained weight and, she's got cellulite. Oh my goodness, so, but it's really, it's the underlying wounds. And, we were kind of talking about that a little bit ago, but, there's stuff, neglect, trauma, abuse, abandonment, grief, loss. There's something where we're dissociating, not being vulnerable, not, going off and getting dopamine hits, whatever, is more appealing. That is not stuff that you're going to be able to figure out, easily or on your own. So getting qualified help, to unpack all of that. A formal therapeutic disclosure is, after you've done your work, you have a solid plan, you're able to show up, you're able to take responsibility and not have it sound like it's blaming your partner. That would be, the part of the process in order to build trust and heal. But just answering questions about, well, I think it's because of this,
right.
It's always going to come out hollow, and there's going to be 150 more questions because it's not going to make sense.
Tammy, you said something about the how versus the why. And I actually have an answer for that I've never thought of until I heard you listening, which is, it's kind of like saying, well, doctor, why do I have cancer? Or doctor, why do I have diabetes? It doesn't really, it's interesting to know, and it might be helpful at some point. Could be a family trait, could be something you ate or did. But the reality is, what's important now is, how do I fix this? How do I get better? How do I stop this? How do I stop hurting other people? The how is much more important. Everybody wants to know why. And guess why? It's all about me. We do in treatment help you understand why. And by the way, every single person I've worked with has early life trauma. They do. And whether you know it or not, you remember or not, or you say, I was great, I had food on the table and I went to school and I had clothes, there are other things that went on, or you wouldn't ended up this way. We bring people to a taste of why, because it keeps them from hating themselves. It's much easier to say, I'm really screwed up and there's things that happened to me that left me being screwed up, than I'm a bad person. And the why does leave people thinking, okay, I'm kind of screwed up here. There's a lot of problems that I have, and that's why. You don't need a whole lot more why than, I'm kind of broken and I have a lot of problems and I screw up because there's emotionally broken parts of me. That's enough why. The question is, why do I have cancer? Well, maybe it runs in your family, maybe it's something you ate, but let's talk about how we can take care of that cancer. That's what matters, how. And so I want to just jump on that, Tammy, because psychological issues are no different on some level than physical issues, at least until the issue is solved. You want to know why, stop acting out, put your life in order, and then go back and look at why. Or maybe it won't matter so much because your life is working. But the how is not nearly as the why is not nearly as important as you think it is. And Tammy's right. Everybody who comes into Seeking Integrity, why are you here? Well, I want to know why I did this. Well, okay, but we can have a film run backwards as your whole life. We can show you every minute in real time, and you're still not going to stop doing it. You'll know why, but that's not what you really need to know. You need to know how to learn how to live differently. And then you can really deal with why. So good answer, Tammy.
And I think those whys are layers too. It's, like the white hot rage. I mean, I've been in recovery a long time, and I was like, this is not serving me well. I have to go get some professional help, and I did. But it's one of those where I could not have dealt with. Those were deep wounds. There is no way, really early in recovery, I was prepared emotionally, everything else to deal with that. So I think that there are things that we continue to learn and grow into if we're willing to do the work. So you may, 20 years from now, as long as you stay in recovery, have more discoveries and more, more insights as to some of the underlying issues. It's all great. I mean, I love that I can continue to learn and grow. Not always in the moment. Sometimes I go, I really didn't want to do that lesson, but
well, no one's perfect. But I do want to say one more thing. We teach courses. We teach a sex addiction 101 course. It's 3 sections of 6 courses. The beginning is how do I stop? How do I figure this out? How do I come to peace with what I did? How do I move on and live life differently? But as you get into the later courses, it's more about, let's look at how you grew up, and let's look at, and it's not to fix anything, but it's to help someone understand how they got there. So, take the first course, you're going to learn a lot about changing your behavior and what it's meant. Take some of the advanced courses, and then you're really looking at, how did this happen? What does it mean to me? And how do I move on? And that's why we teach courses in sections, because some folks, they just want to get to, how do I fix this? And then that's all they need from us. And other people really want a deeper understanding, and then they stay longer and do more courses. So you can learn more about this, but first you got to do the work of changing your behavior. And by the way, why don't you not tell your partner any of the reasons why you're acting out? You probably don't really even know. What would be better, if I was a spouse, what I want to hear is, what are you doing about it? And how can I be reassured that you're not continuing to do it? That's what your spouse needs. Your spouse doesn't need answers as to why. What they need is to know that they're walking to a home that's safe, and that they can in some way believe some of what you're saying. That's what they need. And if you're focused on them, why is much less important than how can we make this right?
So you brought up the work groups. So on the Seeking Integrity site, the Inner Child group starts tomorrow, July 5th. That's a 6-week course. That is part of the going deeper things. But the Sex Addiction 101 starts again on July 11th. So both of those, are part of the process. We've got other work groups, including the Betrayed Partner Codependent group, starting August 17th. So check those out on the Seeking Integrity site. So, okay. Next question. Do you think that full disclosure is possible within the first month of the first D-Day, or do you think it's all probability that there would be more disclosed in a couple of months?
Well, I do want to say that every situation is different, and I'm going to give you an answer, but I want to say, for example, Tammy and I recently, we were in a consultation group, and I train therapists. I train maybe some of your therapists, and we meet every week with about 25, 30 therapists. And one of the questions that came up recently is, the spouse that I'm working for is pregnant. And, what do I do about disclosure? First trimester, second trimester, third, should we not talk about it at all until the baby's born? So I'm not saying that there isn't a general rule, but I will say that there are exceptions, usually not based on the addict, would be my suggestion. Like, addicts don't have a lot of reasons to not do this, but spouses maybe you don't have enough support. Maybe you're not ready to hear it. And that's part of it too. I know you really want to hear everything, but I'll tell you, partners, I will not do disclosure unless you have a therapist. I will not do disclosure with you unless you have a support group. I am not going to dump, and I don't mean to be mean, but I'm not going to dump all this stuff on you. As much as you want to hear the truth, you're going to be hurt. And I want to make sure that you have, and again, questions bring about more questions. So I was just writing about this. So many spouses feel, and I understand this, well, could you just answer this question? Well, I just need to know this. Well, what about that? And you think it's your denial, I would say, respectfully. You think that if you get the answer, then it's going to be better, or you're going to figure it out, or it's going to make sense. Questions just bring about more questions, bring about more questions. And so I'm not saying don't ask them, but the answer you're looking for is so much bigger than the individual question. So back to your answer. I'm very frustrated with therapists who say, well, we're going to get to disclosure in 6 months. That makes me insane. I think with a reasonably healthy couple, when there's been a betrayal, I know that if I'm working with the addict, I can, within maximum 6 weeks, really sit down and get them to make a clear list of what they need to do and how to do it. They will have written lists. We will have gone over it. We will have checked it out. We'll make sure their language is clear. I don't want disclosures to be about, I'm sorry, or please forgive me, or I just want you to have the information. On the other side of it, during that 6-8 week period, you're getting support, you're joining groups, you're getting spousal support, so that when you come together and do this, you'll both be ready. So my answer is, I would not probably do this within the first month of D-Day. I would do it when you both have professionals you're working with, when you both have joined support groups that help guide you, and when you have a plan for what to do if we don't want to talk to each other and, I don't want you in the house. I think then you can say, okay, maybe 6-8 weeks at the most from that period of time when we're stable is a time to do it. Remember, you've lost your best friend. Hopefully they are your best friend. When you're in pain, when I'm in pain, I turn to my spouse. That's what I say. I'm angry, I'm hurt. It's the first person I go to. You've lost your best friend. You no longer can turn to them because they hurt you. And so you need people around you when you get all of that information that you can turn to and say, please support me, because the person who's telling you can't do that. I think if you've got a situation going, supportive group, supportive therapy, then, and there's a clear line to how and when we're going to do this, 6 or 8 weeks, I think, is reasonable. Do I think in probability there'll be more disclosed in a couple of months? So that's my job. During that 6 or 8 week period is my job to sit with that client and say, let's go through your whole life. When we're doing residential treatment and seeking integrity, we do timelines. And we go all the way back to when you were 5, when you were 6, on a whole bunch of different levels, not just betrayal. But it takes, and I hate to say this because this is hurtful and I don't mean it to be, but many of us have acted out so many times over our lives or in so many different ways that we don't even remember half the stuff we did. And what my job as a therapist is to go over it and over it and over it so that we have a very clear picture of what you remember and what has happened. And the purpose of that, the reason it takes 6 or 8 weeks is I don't want the addict to come back to you in 3 months and say, oh, I forgot this. I want to do as much as I can to make sure that information is presented to you in a clear way. This is why we recommend professionals who know how to do this. I have seen so many disclosures go sideways in a really bad way because the professionals involved did not know what they were doing. This is, again, not general practice. This is like cancer. You have to go to a cancer doctor. And I will say this, Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com, we make referrals. We're just talking about this. We make referrals all the time. Tammy makes 100 referrals a month because we know either I've trained them or Tammy's worked with them. We know who is best to refer you to where you live. So feel free to reach out to us. We will make sure that you get the information you need. We don't get kickbacks, but we do like to support you with the information that, a lot of therapists are wonderful people, but they're not going to know how to deal with this directly. And we're trained. So did I answer that? I think I did.
You did. Yeah. I think the only caveat, like there are sometimes when it's going to hit the news, where, doing a disclosure, you kind of on an emergency basis,
Right.
it's everybody's going to find out,
or legal issues.
It's like, yeah. There are
Mhm.
times when something, but this sounds like I'm just asking if it can be done. If you are, like Dr. Rob said, if you are working with a qualified professional, both of you, and you're really stepping into that work, I think listen to your qualified professional for how quickly you can be prepared. But unfortunately, so Dr. Rob does a peer case consultation group each week. And the most talked about topic is disclosures. So that tells you like how important it is to have qualified professionals supporting your work in doing this, because a good disclosure lays a foundation for moving forward in a different way. The things that an addict can do that really mess it up are withhold information. That would be like, because if I'm using he and she, if she finds out about this, I know it'll be over. She's going to find out, and she's going to now know that the disclosure wasn't, worth the paper it was written on. The other thing is doing the 25-page, disclosures where
Right.
it's every gory detail of everything, highly problematic. I mean, there's some things that are really problematic for disclosures, but a well done disclosure, it really sets the
It's a
foundation
step
for
toward
moving
healing.
forward. Yeah, yeah. So I encourage you to do it. I encourage you to do it with the proper professional support to do it and do it well. So
And I just want to add that one of the reasons that Tammy and I do this, or we have all these support groups that are at no charge, is because we've talked about not everyone will make therapy, not everyone will be able to have those resources, but this is worth spending money on. You're talking about saving your relationship and reconnecting in ways that you haven't in a long time. It is worth, I'm not saying to take your rent money, but if there is a way that you can find, and it doesn't have to go on forever. People think, oh, therapy goes on forever. If you have an intention, which is we're going to spend 6 weeks at this and we're going to get through disclosure. And then once the dust is settled, maybe we'll check in with them once a month, but we're going to do our work in support groups and 12-step programs. You don't have to be in endless therapy, but this particular issue, I think Cam and I both agree, you want this done once and you want it done right. And it takes professionals to do that, in my opinion.
yeah, I agree. I always say this is not a DIY job. This is not something that you want to
Right.
go, oh yeah, I'm going to, remodel my house. No, this is get the help. So, okay. How do you define sobriety for people with CSBD?
Compulsive sexual behavior disorder. So if I took, let me say this. Oops, my phone is ringing and I'm not going to, oh, it's unknown, which means someone's trying to sell me. Okay. Well, I can't. So for many years in the United States, we use the word sex addiction. It's a familiar term. It's an easy term, like alcoholism. Everybody knows what an alcoholic is. Everyone knows what a drug addict is. But when you get to the formal literature and the diagnostic manuals, the things that therapists use to communicate with each other, where we use very specific language. We don't call people alcoholics and drug addicts. We say they have a substance use disorder or something like. Now, I would not go to a 12-step meeting and say, hi, my name is Rob and I have a substance use disorder. But if I said it to a therapist or another professional, they would understand exactly what that means and the criteria for it. So in the same way, compulsive sexual behavior disorder is the words that the docs might use, or I might use with another professional, but they know, and we know, and I know that what we're really talking about, if you get really out of the medical jargon, is we're talking about sex addiction. So I wouldn't define sobriety any differently because CSBD is the exact same issue as sex addiction. It's just a formal language that therapists can use or doctors can use to clarify what we're looking at. And like I said, substance use disorder, CSBD, I mean, these are all formal terms for alcoholism, drug addiction, sex addiction. So to me, sobriety is no different. Sobriety is sobriety. And, if you want to talk about what that is, I would say go to one of our support groups. We teach sobriety in Porn Addiction 101. We teach sobriety in Sex Addiction 101. It's one of the first things we do. So, and that's what sponsors are for, and 12-step meetings and groups. So I would be less worried about, so I'm just guessing, and I'm going to make this up, Tammy, that this is an addict. And I'm going to make up that they are looking for the definition. And I would say it doesn't really matter. What matters is, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to treat the people you care about? Do you want to live in integrity? It isn't about getting away with something. It's about coming to peace with who you are and having and I use this word, it's important. It's not a religious term, a moral code, a set of values that you want to live by. I had to learn mine because there wasn't much in my home. I had to learn what it meant to respect my family, what it meant to honor my relationship. And so it's less important to me that this is right and that is wrong, because what is important to me is I want to be an honest person who doesn't lie to the people I care about or to myself. And when you look at it that way, it doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is how you act on it and the decisions you make to heal. Do you have
Well done. Yeah, the only other thing I would say is, I think it's a little more complicated. Like with an eating disorder, it's more complicated to define, what your sobriety is, because it's different than with substances. It's like, don't use a substance, So complete abstinence is typically, sobriety for for chemical, but with, sex, porn, food, all of those, financial, I mean, what is going to have integrity in your life and not hurt your relationships, not keep you living a secret life, that that is exactly what we teach in in the various work groups. So glad you're here, glad you're asking the question.
I actually want to build on that really quickly, which is that, and I talk about this in the podcast, and if you haven't listened to the podcast, they are free. We have, Tammy said, 993,000 downloads of sex, love, and addiction. But one of the
I'm
things
waiting
I
to hit a
talk
million. Go listen to them so that we get there. So.
We will. You're a numbers girl.
I am.
But one of the things I was going to say is that, and now I don't remember because I'm getting old.
All right.
So I hate that, Tammy. I'll just tell you guys, one of my signs of getting old is, see this phone? I'm always looking for it because it's so important. And 9 times out of 10, when I'm looking for my phone, I find that it's under my arm because I've tucked it under my arm to not lose it. And then I'm looking around saying, where's my phone? And of course it's right here. So anyway, I apologize. I don't really remember what I was
It was
sobriety.
We were talking about sobriety. Does that ring a bell? Like, what is,
No.
Okay. All right.
But thank you.
We'll move on. I'm the betrayed. My spouse has been using porn since we met. About a year and a half ago, me and my adult children were sent an inappropriate video of him by a stranger. He denied it was him, and to date, he has not taken accountability for any of the 25 plus years of his porn use. We are not currently living together. He is in therapy, he says. I have sent him your program and other information. I have been asking him for disclosure so there is a level playing field and I can decide if I want to try making this work. I have a therapist and I'm in 12-step and recently found your groups for betrayed partners. That's great. That's on the sexandrelationshiphealing.com site. He says he wants to stay together, but in my opinion, is not doing anything to learn about his addiction. He says his therapist doesn't agree he has an addiction. He is impulsive, but I don't believe anything he says. Any suggestions on how to move this process forward? I have expressed my needs, but he is not very communicative, at least not with me. I have Dr. Rob does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation, and you two sound perfect for this, honestly, because it's Dr. Rob, 2 hours via Zoom, and he's listening to both of you. He's a world-renowned expert on these issues. And so to have him listen to each of you, get your information, and then give you guidance on, how you can move forward would be really helpful. But what I do hear is he has a generalist therapist. So Dr. Rob has talked about, you have cancer, and he's going to a general therapist who's going like, I can give you a flu shot, so anyway, so Dr. Rob, I had to so if you want to learn more about the expert consultations, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. I'll be happy to tell you more, but man, oh man, that seems like a perfect fit.
Well, and I was going to say that, Tammy, I'm not trying to sell anyone anything, but this is a very, very useful situation for me to sit down for 2 hours, because I'm going to listen to the whole story. And to be honest, 9 times out of 10, like in your situation, the addict is they're moving around, they're doing this, they got this person believing this, they got this person believing that, they've told themselves a lie. But when you sit there with me and you tell me everything that's happened to you, and then I'm going to turn to your addict spouse and I'm going to say, I'm going to ask them some questions about how they want their relationship to work, how they want their family to work, and I think the reason Tammy and I are talking about this is one thing I'm particularly good at is being very clear with people about how their choices and behaviors are affecting the people they love and themselves. And I'm usually able to motivate people. In fact, I've seen a bunch of people like challenge either go into therapy or come to our program, or because they got a lot of times. One of the things that we do in our treatment center is we invite the voice of the spouse to come in, and we ask you to write a letter about what you've experienced, what's hurting you and what has hurt you for a long time in your relationship. And I've had so many of the people in treatment say, I've heard that a million times, but when you read it, in front of all these guys, I realized what a crappy spouse I've been. And so, sometimes the things you say are dead on, but they're not going to move off the dime until somebody else, especially a man in my experience, confronts them and challenges them with what they've done. I also, just to say it, and this comes up a lot, who knows what his therapist said? I don't know whether his therapist says they believe in it or not. Have you sat in that session? Did you hear that from the therapist? Because I don't mean to be rude, but addicts lie. And if it means that I don't have to take an action on this because I can blame my therapist, I'm going to do that. Bottom line is, this is not a relationship. This is not a real relationship at this point. This is a mom and a little kid. And this is not and I don't know if you're a female or a male, but this is not somebody who is being respected. This is not someone who if I were involved with you and I was doing this, it'd be very clear to me very clear to others that I am not treating you like someone I really love and care about. And I think that's part of the denial is we think that we can control the world and we can manage everything and we'll push it off as far as we can and we'll manipulate and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I think it takes you guys setting a boundary. And we talk a lot about boundaries in the Betrayed Partners course. A boundary is not, I'm going to do this to make you do that. A boundary is, I don't feel safe and I'm not happy and I need to do this for me. So I would ask you, how long do you want to be in this situation as it is? You're not living together. I got that. But what's next? I mean, if you no longer have this person in your life as a live-in partner and they're still pulling this kind of crap, then how important are you? How important is the relationship? Because I have to tell you, if I got kicked out, I would be begging and screaming, what can I do to get back into my home? What can I do to be with my family? Because that is the most important value to me, is the foundation of our lives and our homes. What is going on with this person that they don't realize that the steps are already being taken for this relationship to go away? And I am concerned that he or she has not woken up and said, oh my God, I have everything to lose. And it could well be that, their behavior is more important than you are. And you're going to find that out. But I do encourage you to set a boundary or set whatever that means so that you're not sitting around expecting something to change that isn't going to change. And you don't do it to make them change. You say, like, I don't really want to spend time with you anymore while you are in this place, or I'm only going to go out and have a bite to eat with you. You don't get to come to the house. You have to protect yourself from this kind of look over there, look over here. Don't look at me. This is going to make you insane. And so I really appreciate your asking the question in terms of how to move the process forward. All you can do is take care of yourself and say, I am not willing to be in this situation, whatever that means, or I want to see your therapist with you and explain, And by the way, therapists who don't believe in sex addiction or CSBD, I always
Compulsive
get that
sexual
wrong.
behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't really understand the current state of psychology and therapy. It's well acknowledged now internationally that this is a problem. And if they are not able to, my job as a therapist is to follow you as a client, not to make up my own decisions about what's useful. If you say, I feel really addicted, it's ruining my life, I'm going to follow you down that path. How can I support you in dealing with this thing? I'm not going to say, no, you don't have that problem, because I'm not living your life. I'm not deciding what's right and wrong for you. I can only feedback what's happening. And that just doesn't seem very informed of that professional, if that's really what they're saying. And we don't know. I will put it at that. Tammy, I need to use the restroom. I will be right back.
Well, okay, but I want you to, you can use the restroom, but I want you to answer too, because I'll deal with this, but listen, because it's the disclosure.
I
you say, I want disclosure. Yes.
I can hear everything, but you can't hear me. And that's the important part when I run the restroom. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yes. I don't want to hear you. So I have to call this out because you say, I have been asking for disclosure so there's a level playing field and I can decide if I want to try making this work. You don't want disclosure. He's not doing any of the work. He won't show up in a useful way. It won't be, he doesn't have the support of a qualified therapist to help guide him, to make, so a good disclosure is 2 pages, but it's combined information, it's data, so that you can. I think you can already make the decision, although I really do go back to what I said about Dr. Rob's expert consultation. I hear often from partners who are struggling of like, what do I do? They have validation, either yes, I need to step away from this relationship, he's not showing up, or the addict does go, oh, now I see, and I really do need to, and I, because he's saying, oh, I want to stay in this relationship, but he's not really doing the work, so that's, straddling the fence of like, yeah, I want to stay in the relationship, but I still want to, I still want to be able to, act out if I want to. So you don't want a disclosure. You think you want a disclosure, but you will get one of the really bad versions of a disclosure because he's not able to yet do the work. So, so I kind of hold it back to the, an expert consultation with Dr. Rob, I think would give you clarification and give him clarification, but also hopefully, the kick in the pants to like, oh, I really do actually need to do more work,
I really hear in this note an addict who is trying to push off as long as trying to dance as fast as they can to keep this healing process from going forward, to keep them from themselves from having to take responsibility. They are still think they're running the show. And unfortunately for them, you're probably a warm and kind human being who's been deeply hurt. And it is not fair for this person to leave you dangling while they decide what they want to do. They're still not listening to you. They're not understanding what's important to you, and they're not respecting you. And so you do that what you will, but I'm concerned for you that you're going to hang in there in ways that you're going to get hurt more. This person needs to step up and do the right thing finally, and they're not. And you're right to write us, and you're right to be concerned.
So the person put in the chat, we've already answered this question, but this comes up all the time, so I'm going to ask it anyway. This is the addict. I can't remember enough information to meet my wife's needs in the disclosure I have made. I don't want to make up stuff and certainly don't want to downplay what I did, but what I actually did on particular days is not there for me. I always say I'm probably acting out at any time, even if I'm unsure. Are there ways to recall specifics better? This goes to what I was just saying about, like, it's 2 pages. It is not the 50-page narrative. And then, on this day and this time. Now, and I think you've talked about this before too. Like, if there were specific things, like when we were on a vacation and I said I was going to this meeting and I did, I think it's really important for partners to hear if it happened with a friend or family member, if it happened in the home or the vehicle. I've had, people that have sold the vehicle because of that. So, So I think that there are certain specifics that you absolutely need to know, but the timeline of, oh my gosh, in active addiction, we're so in that zone. We cannot recall every single thing that, that happened. And particularly there's a lot of times when it's porn, like, how do you remember how many hours you spent on porn, every day for how many years, So can you speak to that a little bit more though, please?
I do. As an addict, as someone who has been there, what I hear you really saying is, how can I calm my, I don't know, it's a wife, how can I calm her down? How can I make her feel better? How can I help her understand that I really am doing everything? And the truth is, you can't. You cannot convince someone with intellectual information when they're having an emotional reaction. She is angry. She is hurt. She wants the answer. It doesn't really matter what you say. It's always going to matter what you do. And by the way, the courses and stuff we offer are because we run into these issues. So I wrote a book. It's my most popular book, called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. There's also a course we teach. It may simply be that you don't know how to, you feel like when you say, I feel like I need to make up an answer just to keep her quiet, that's not it. You haven't accepted what they're going through. What I would teach you to say is, you know what, I didn't do that particular thing, but you're absolutely right. I can completely understand how you wouldn't believe me. You think I'm lying some more. You know, I have no control over that. All I can say is I'm doing the best to heal, and I am being honest with you, but I don't expect you to believe it. A lot of times we'll try to defend or try to figure, or don't you know how many meetings I'm going to? And can't you see how hard I'm working? And, you know, now I'm being honest. Why aren't you listening to me? And that is not respecting the emotional state that partner is in. I don't care how much work you've done or how sober you are, that partner is hurting and you need to address the hurt, not the language. And fall on your sword, by the way. You don't have to be right. You don't have to look good. You don't have to have them believe you. You have to be in the right place within yourself. And then you can say to your partner, I know you don't believe me. I know you have no right. I have no right to try to convince you of anything. And I deserve all of your anger. Just own all of it. And I'm doing the right thing. And I hope over time that you can begin to see that. And then it still might be a terrible evening, but it doesn't matter because terrible things have happened. And you're not going to be able to fix their anger no more than they're going to get the perfect answer to what you've done that will make them feel better. They're never going to feel better. This isn't going to get better. It's happened. Adapting to it, finding peace with it, that's a different thing. So anyway, I would encourage you to stop trying to make them happy. Maybe if I give them another answer, they'll be happy, and start understanding what they're going through and why they're asking those questions, because they don't trust you. They don't believe in you. They feel like they're going to get hurt again. Tell them they're right, that you have hurt them in the past and you can understand that they think you're going to do it again. That will make a much bigger that will have a much larger effect because you're helping them understand that you know where they are, rather than arguing or disagreeing. And the worst thing you can do is say, I've told you that 3 times. Well, that makes me feel like, why can't I ask 5 times if I want to? You ruined our life, you know? So give your partners a break and allow them the feelings they have. Don't argue with them. Don't try to make them feel better. Just tell them what's true. And what's true is they have no reason to trust you.
Yeah.
They have no reason to believe in you. And you completely understand that. What were we going to say, Tammy?
I was gonna say, but don't make, I mean, I'm always shocked at how often I hear, don't make up extra stuff, you know, because all that does is like, I knew it. I knew there was more. I knew there was more. Like, no, own what you did. You know, I love that our program is called Seeking Integrity. Integrity is I own what I do, but I'm not gonna make up stuff that, you know, of things I did or didn't do. It has to be about what is the truth. So, and it's okay to say, I don't even remember. And if you're doing a formal therapeutic disclosure, there would be, if you're working with a qualified professional, there will be a plan, because there may be something that comes up, you know, that you completely didn't remember, but that would be important to disclose. So that is part of the process of working with qualified professionals, is what would constitute, I need to tell it with a therapist, what is like, okay, well, you know, we can talk about this, you know, the two of us having a plan. That's how we move forward together.
And I want to just let you spouses know, one of the things that goes along with the issues we have is we are not particularly assertive. We'll grab something and take it if we want it, but just saying, I don't like this, I'm struggling with this, whatever, it's very hard for us. You know, one of the things I might say to my spouse is, you know, you have every reason to mistrust me and I'm doing the best I can. But when you get angry like that, I shut down. I don't know what to say. I mean, tell them what you're experiencing. It doesn't mean they have to do it differently, but if you're all caught up in your fears and I just want to say something to make them feel better, then you're not sitting in your own self. You're more focused on how you can calm them down than what's really going on with you. You will build intimacy by being honest. And what Tammy just said is really true. Why would you tell them something that isn't true just to shut them up, when the whole goal of this is to be honest? Like, why would you want to be dishonest to think that they're going to feel better, just like you were dishonest when you didn't care how they felt? It's about being honest, really, really, on every level. And you can say, I don't know how to respond to that, but I'm going to come back later when I'm calmed. You know, fine, but tell the truth. Yeah. We don't have any more questions, Tammy. We
No,
did it.
we're out of time.
Oh,
So
rock on.
yes. So thank you, Dr. Rob. Happy 4th of July to those of you
Happy
in the
4th of
US.
July,
Thanks
everybody.
everybody for being here,
Right.
So stay tuned. I've said it on some of the other groups. The calendar for July is a little different. We've got some people on vacations and things. So please, on the sexandrelationshiphealing.com site, check out, because there's a few things that we had to take them off the calendar for July. So pay attention to the calendar so that that you are current. But thank you, Dr. Rob. Bye, everybody.
And let me say one more thing, since it's the 4th of July, try to keep the fireworks outside and not inside.
There you go.
My best. How about that?
I was going to say, and recovery is independence. How's that?
Ooh, and freedom and all that good stuff.
Freedom. Yes, that's actually better. It's freedom. So yeah.
Independence,
thank you.
freedom. I'll take all that. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tammy.
Bye.